The exchange between Paul Heyman and Jey Uso at Backlash this past weekend in France was very interesting, and I thought it was a nice touch from WWE to add that to the mix. Of course, you had Jey getting ready for the big world title match against Damian Priest. You guys know I had done a couple different videos, actually, a couple YouTube shorts, wondering, hey, could we actually see the Bloodline get involved in this, maybe cost Jey Uso that opportunity? Of course, the thought at the time was maybe that's Jacob Fatu wound up being the new Bloodline member as Tonga Loa. But when they set it up to where they are all back there kind of intimidating Jey before the world title match, you see Solo walk up, kind of turns his eyes towards Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. And then there is the wise man, Paul Heyman, who comes in afterwards, who continues, I think, Paul, to have the best facial expressions out there as he's telling the story of the Bloodline and, how everything is crumbling and you have this new Bloodline forming and all that. Heyman's been fantastic. But it was this exchange, right, between Paul Heyman and Jey Uso, where you have Paul walk up and he is just kind of looking at Jey with what can only be described as a helpless feeling, where he is looking at Jey in a sense to warn him, but at the same time, he's looking at Jey almost as if to say, please help me. And I thought that was interesting because that now sets up the dynamic that you guys know we talked about for a little while now, where you do kind of bring back that original Bloodline together with, which is, is headlined by Roman Reigns, but you have to get the Usos back together first. You have to get the wise man back on the same. You have to get all those parties back on the same page, right? Which will not be an easy thing to do, and that's why I keep saying I think this is going to be a slow burn type story because this thing has to take a while to play out. You can't just have everyone all of a sudden say, all right, I forgive you for your past sins, and now I'm going to come join together with you, right? And so this was that first little tease kind of the old guard coming back together where, and they didn't really give you much, right? We're reading into this ourselves, and that's, like I said, people are trying to figure out exactly, okay, what do you think this meant from Heyman? A lot of the discussion has been, all right, clearly just a warning to Jey, like, don't get involved, don't even think about, getting involved in this. But at the same time, it also was, as you can see here, this look on Heyman's face, it is one where it's like, I am alone here, right? Like, I don't have Jimmy, I don't have Roman, and he is backstage with these guys, right, at this show, and only Jey is really the one, I guess you could say, that was formerly aligned with Heyman in any way, shape, or form here. And so, the question now becomes, how do they move forward now? Because if that is kind of the message that Heyman is sending, almost as if to ask Jey Uso for help, well, he can't really get that help right now based on the brand split, so it can happen, on a Raw or on a SmackDown, which, as you guys know, my continued thought is, hey, I think they should do whatever they want to do with the brand split. If they want to bring people onto other brands, so be it. Give me a reason for it. Make it strong enough. I know not everyone's for that, but I'm not totally against it when it comes to this Bloodline story. But I think it's actually a good thing because they are going to have to slow burn this thing until Roman gets back, until The Rock gets back, until Jimmy gets back at this point, until you have the debut of a Jacob Fatu. They got a long way to go. So keeping the brand split actually keeps them apart for now and forces them, gives them these kind of reasons to where they have this kind of interaction on a joint branded PLE at Backlash. And I think now, though, is the question. When do we see Jey and Heyman again, sort of come together? Is that something happens at the King of the Ring and Queen of the Ring at Saudi Arabia? Something happens at Clash at the Castle and so forth. You just keep moving along to these sort of dual branded shows. Those are really the places you have to tell these stories right now, other than just kind of as secondary mentions into whatever the primary thing Jey goes into now after losing that match to Damian Priest. And like I said, there are still trade possibilities, all that, I suppose, although I think they said the trade deadline had to be, before the brand split took place, which starts on this week's edition of Raw, as we know. But I'm curious because they definitely set the seeds there to tell you that this was, like I said, my interpretation is this was a cry for help from Paul Heyman. Knowing that it was going to be a big ask, and Heyman didn't come out and say it, but it's a big ask to come out and just sort of approach Jey, given everything that they did to Jey, right? Given everything that he and Roman did to make Jay's life a living hell, Jimmy included. And so that's where I am so fascinated by how they get all these pieces back together. And again, I like the fact that it's not just as easy as, all right, Jay's coming to the rescue for Heyman or something, like right away, which we know too. I mean, my thought is that at some point, my guess is the new bloodline, the Savage bloodline, is going to have to get physical with Paul Heyman. And knowing that Roman's away and all that, like, who is the person that has to make the save? Maybe they hold that off until Roman comes back, or maybe that is one where, a Jimmy or a Jay or whatever, that's kind of where you see all the pieces start to reunite. But I do like the fact that they have a lot of options to work with now. I mean, you guys know, if you watch the Backlash reaction show, we were talking about what were the tag team pairings going to be going into this thing. Well, now we know it's going to be the Usos and the Guerrillas of Destiny and Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. That's your big tag team match they're going to work to. You have big singles matches with Roman and Solo, probably Roman and, Jacob Fatu maybe at some point, if that's who Jacob Fatu sides with. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, maybe you bring Fatu over with Roman now. Put him on that side because of the numbers and everything. I don't know about that. I think Jacob Fatu is the savage, give no shits type heel is what he needs to be playing when he comes in. Whereas Roman is getting cheered already. People want to see Roman again. All of this, and we know the Usos. Jay is, a top-level star. Look at the entrance he had at Backlash, right? And so, those are the things that I think it just makes sense to do that. And then, again, Heyman is kind of the person who's trying to find a way out of this whole mess, but he's stuck right now, and he has no way out. And I think that was kind of the push and the hint towards Jey Uso, as if saying, hey, Jay, you got to stay out of this, but I need help. What am I going to do now? I have no tribal chief. I have no Jimmy. I don't have Jay. It's, that's kind of Heyman and the masterful work that he can do just with his mannerisms. And I think that's what's going to make Heyman so important to the success of this thing and how it eventually pays off. Because right now, yes, Solo's carrying this thing. The new additions are carrying it. But it is Paul Heyman who is carrying this week to week. And I think that's where having the brand split in place gives you some challenges where you can't really have those interactions with Jay, but it keeps it on your mind, right? And that was the whole point of what they did at Backlash. They made you think, all right, maybe they are going to get involved in this match. They didn't, but now it stays on your mind, knowing that they're always there and knowing that little bitty interaction between Paul Heyman and Jey Uso could set in motion so many different things now moving forward, knowing that we are going to eventually get everybody coming back together. The question is when and how. That is what we're trying to figure out from here moving forward. But I thought that was the Triple H little details. You guys know I talk about it all the time. That was another one of those where you had to do it. Everybody's in the same building. Everybody has matches of those parties involved. You had to do it. And now we figure out what's the next thing they get to. Is it something at King of the Ring, Queen of the Ring? Is it further along than that? We'll find out. But I think Paul Heyman's message was very clear. He needs help. And the fact that he was willing to sort of give that look to Jey Uso for all the things he's done in the past to Jay. And now that's how desperate Paul Heyman is to try to find his way out of a situation that he cannot control anymore with whatever Solo Sikoa and the real tribal chief is up to with the Bloodline. So let me know what you guys thought of that little exchange between Paul Heyman and Jey Uso. Anything else that may have been inferred there that we didn't discuss, kind of coming out of it. Not a lot of words said, right? Just two people looking at each other and kind of having a mutual understanding of what's going on. That's what that was all about. But where do things go from here? What are your predictions for how this Bloodline thing now plays out next? When does Jacob Fatu appear? When does maybe Jimmy come back? When does Jay get officially thrust into this whole thing? Give me your thoughts. Always enjoy them in the comments below. And again, always appreciate your feedback. Hit the subscribe button and like button on your way out. Thanks as always for watching Wrestling Reaction. And again, give me your thoughts on Paul Heyman and Jey Uso. What was that all about and what's next for the Bloodline?